just to add to that, people like me in the corporate world, I mean, our corporate business efforts, and we need to spend time with a nonprofit. I spend time with the Asian Immigrant Women Advocates on the Asian Pacific Fund that helps 70 affiliate organizations provide social and health services to the Asian Pacific Islander community. I mean, I think the corporate and the nonprofit, like here we have today, we just need to converge as much as possible. And our role, being on the business side, on nonprofit boards, are just as important too.
Just wanted to add to that because I think that was right on in every which way. And not just for ourselves. I mean, I think supporting leaders is one thing, right? But I think you can ask the very same question about the way and the manner that we work with our own, participants, our own clients, our own target audience. Because I think we also have to sort of change the dynamic or the way that we even engage with them. Because somebody asked me about, how did you see the lending circle idea? How did you come up with that, when engaging low-income immigrants? And I was like, well, the way we did it is, one, we rejected the way the conventional wisdom had us think that we needed to work with, low-income immigrants, because conventional wisdom had us, to think that they were broken, that they were stupid, that they didn't know anything, that they were doing everything backwards, and then they needed to stop that. Because here in America, this is how good-blooded Americans do banking. We need to teach them, right? So we were their saviors, and they were just there waiting for us to save them. We had to sort of reject that, because that's like the deficit model. That's the broken paradigm that we actually have. I mean, I think you mentioned the complex. I mean, that complex is based on that idea. And I think we need to reject it, because with that frame, you can never see value. I mean, how can you, right? Because all you're seeing is brokenness. All you're seeing is this or that problem, or you're never even acknowledging, the value or the potential people have, because all you're looking at is how many boxes am I going to check out with this particular grant or that. And so that is what we need to sort of do, because once we start looking at people for what's good in their lives, or what is that is good in their community, that's the basis for a whole new strength-based paradigm that we can engage. I mean, in Mexico, we have a saying called "Cada quien tiene un don." Cada quien tiene un don means like we all have a sense of worth. It's kind of like the little light of mine, if you will. We all have something of value just by our mere humanity. It doesn't matter what color or whatever. Just because you're a human being, we have something of worth. But we never acknowledge that in the industrial complex that you mentioned. Because it's not based on that. That's not how we get our funding. That's not how we do our work. But I think we need to sort of reject it, because we'll never see value in our clients. We'll never see value in ourselves as people, as a community, if we still kind of perpetuate that lie that is out there. And instead, we need to actually think about and challenge ourselves to say, well, how can we do more? By in meeting people, at the moments of strength, and what is working in their lives. So I want to put it out there, because I think that's, there's more that we need to do. But if we just keep doing the same things, nothing's going to change. And then those statistics about people are dying because they're poor, it's going to get even worse. So I think we have to dramatically shift the paradigm, shift the discussion, and then start engaging with ourselves and our community in a completely new way.
So I hope the audience is getting the kind of dialectic we're probing for here, which is these incredible personal stories of agency, of resilience, of overcoming extraordinary things, have led to a consciousness of organizational and cultural and humility, and seeking support in the wisdom of the people we serve. And that's what I took from the Bold Leadership article, was the restraint. And a quick personal reflection I'll give is, in training as a clinician, my first supervisor was a 74-year-old African-American gay woman. And in the very first supervision I had, I started coming in and talking about the sexual assault victims I was treating. I talked for like 6 or 7 minutes at the beginning of the session, and she said to me, she slammed her hands on the table, and she said, "Alex, whenever you feel a pressing desire to speak, when your stomach gets tight, when your muscles clench, shut the fuck up." Sorry. So I'm trying to tell that story to hold the beautiful reflections I heard of personal agency. Just because we have Christina here, and I want to be cognizant of some of the consciousness we heard, and I hope someone's recording, because some of the things you said were extraordinary that I think are well worth reflection. But there is a need for the social justice sector to operate more effectively, more efficiently, and capitalism is not a value system. We don't all have to, that's not good, moral, right, and just. But there is, and I mentioned this earlier, I think a consciousness in our sector that all the kids I talk to at Berkeley want to be an executive director. They don't. Their leading statement isn't, "I want to make the biggest difference." So, I'm curious. But the organization I lead has many thousands of employees, and we have many hundreds of contracts. And I sometimes say, I wish we could fund a few fewer back offices. How do we engage our sector in the hard conversation about creating efficiencies and effectiveness, but not give over this idea that we all have to be business people? I heard this piece. So, Christina, I want to start with you just because I know your work is so focused on bringing things public and financial institutions. So if you have any comments.
Well, I think, like I mentioned, I think having the business people being more involved on the nonprofit boards and being more aware is very important, and also like going back to your roots, appreciating where I came from and understanding that there is this group of people that came after me, new immigrants that will go through the same path that I went through, and I want to help them along, and within the Asian Pacific Fund, we're all business people that's trying to help the community. So I think that's where what we all have to do. Hopefully all of us will go back to our roots and help the community that we came from.
And I guess I'm asking a question that I do not have an answer for, so I want to say this is not a leading question. But we face this problem of connecting marginalized communities to a economy that is dehumanizing, that has created inequality at incredible levels. How do you, because each of you have stories of overcoming extraordinary challenges, how do you negotiate that inside? Like, I don't want to get the 18,000 unduplicated guys coming out of Santa Rita every year a job at Taco Bell, right? So how do we incorporate the fact that we're all engaged in engineering social justice in the context of a broader space that has dehumanized and really created huge suffering for the communities we serve? And this is, if you answer this one right, I'll buy you lunch.
Me?
Oh, I don't. The answer is one of these questions that I struggle with every day, and I think leaders need to hold.
If I had the answer, it'd be a fabulous book, and you make a lot more money. I could take a stab at it. So here's the problem, and again, blaming our sector and myself and all of us who are implicit in it. We celebrate leaders and individuals who run institutions or initiatives or get elected. They get to have these extraordinary experiences. So why wouldn't every young person, and they make better money and they have more privilege and they get to be the boss. And in a culture of meritocracy, that it's the culture to lead. We don't learn how to follow well. So in my current role, it is hard not to be the boss. I was on a site visit yesterday, and I was there with my president, and I wanted to interject like 19 times, and I was like, I'm not the boss. I have to do stuff that I used to tell people to do. I have to do that stuff. The best thing that I can do right now in my career is really learn how to follow, because when I truly take over some stuff, I'm going to be better than ever, because so the problem is we have a culture that celebrates the individual leader. However, we don't think about providing oftentimes, not all of us, but extraordinary experiences for folks who are doing the most difficult work. I tell a story all the time of some of the best money I've ever spent was going in the back of the Guardian newspaper when I was running the Center for Young Women's Development, and I had $6,000 in a learning account that I had gotten from some grant that I could do interesting things with. And I was like, you know what? I want to take 3 badass girls to Africa. The worst ones that I work with. And we went to South Africa for 2 weeks and worked with the COSAs, the Congress of South African Students, and they are forever changed, right? And it wasn't forever changed. Some of the best outcomes I had with those 3 girls of my 10 years, 11 years of working there. And what I realized is their journeys were going to be completely different than mine. And not everybody is going to be in this glass ceiling nonprofit craziness, but what we can do is offer extraordinary experiences for folks who are on the ground. And how we do that is about thinking differently. And it's about learning how to serve and be of service to something very, very, very much larger than who we are. But I think that is going to take a cultural shift in how we talk about celebrating leadership. It is a completely different construct because everybody does want to be the ED. Everybody does want to be the program director. Everybody does want to be the foundation president. And we haven't put enough intensity in learning how to serve.
It's great that they want to be EDs. What I would be more concerned about or want to hear more from them is how empathetic they are. I mean, because leadership is not just you signing the checks or you getting up there and speaking on the podium. Leadership is about being able to connect with other people. But yet, our society, because we have this sort of cult of the self, we actually are prevented or not taught to actually be empathetic. And so I would want to, I would actually challenge them to say, like, you know what, next 10 years, travel, meet people, get outside of their, their comfort zone and challenge themselves, because only through that they can actually then, challenge or start to work whatever they have inside of them and start to learn how to be empathetic with other individuals, because those are the leaders. Again, not by title, but being able to connect, and then through those connections, be able to sort of solve or come up with ideas of how to solve, the bigger problems. But
because there's 5 minutes left, I want to make sure I give each of you a chance to reflect a little bit already on what's happened. But just while you think about it and to frame some of the things we've said. We read the article, everyone I know read the article before they came today, and we found in it a definition of bold leadership that was a focus on mining not only our personal experience, but the experience of those we serve, for excellence, for capacity, for strength, for resilience. But I was really interested to hear the reflection of the leaders was that experience taught me to ask, to serve, to be restrained, to not accept what I'm told. So in your reflections, if you could hold this concept of how do we look outside ourselves to honor the wisdom of the people we serve, like what is that experience? Whether it's, I'm thinking of Mauricio Miller's work, the neighborhood that work where we're actually purposely restraining the energy of the helping sector. So in the organization I lead, I've taken to asking this question to the 2,200 people who work for us. And it is, can you imagine the person you're serving doing what you do? Now acknowledge for a second that, I don't mean like right now, if you're a neurologist, but given the privileges you've been given, can you see that person doing what you do? Because if you can't, you're replicating the power dynamic we're trying to break, right? So our world has to confront some of the false consciousness we have that we've internalized of the individual, of the one. And I really loved how everybody today spoke to the restraint, the inquisitor, the seeking, the empathy that is the consciousness of leadership. And that's what I took from the article. So I just want to give each of you a chance to make some closing comments about what you heard today, what moved you, or...
My way of doing business or in my personal and social life is leveraging my relationships, and I think if anybody leverages their relationships within their community, their professionals, it's how you get to where you want to go, and even for let's say successful executive directors, it's how you leverage your relationship with your board and your advisory board and people who can help you. So I think that's paying it forward and and really using your relationship for success is where you need to be.
Yeah, I think, definitely big takeaway after reflecting on the conversation today and prior is this idea of respect is even more fundamental and paramount to, being a good leader. Respecting yourself and respecting the people that we work with and we work for. Because if we don't have that respect, then we're not going to lead them. We're just going to make the situation worse for them. I mean, I'm at the point where I want to be challenging, presenters when they talk about this or that gap or so forth. I was like, every time you name or talk about something bad in our community, I want to hear something good. It's like if we cannot identify something that is actually working or something good that should be uplifted in our community, then we're not hearing the whole story. That we're only hearing, this other thing. And so, and I think, by looking for what's good in our community, it has to come from a point of respecting that and then seeing that and seeing the value that people have and people bring, to the table. So I wanted to kind of put that out there because I think that's, just by saying that or by doing that, I think that's bold, because our the conventional wisdom society, the structures that we build upon that we're currently operating in, don't have any of that. And then just by doing that simple thing, I think we're going to be challenging, the status quo, and I think we're going to, it'll be for good of ourselves in the long run.
But I'm gonna give it thought because it's too deep of a question, and I need some coffee. And I feel like I'm also about to cry. There's just a lot of grace up here. There's a saying that, well, it's not a saying. It's a spiritual quote. It's from Beatitudes, and blessed are the poor in spirit. May they have mercy. I was walking out of BART yesterday, and there was a black man, maybe in his 50s, I don't know, and he was laid out on one of the circles, and it was in the morning, and hundreds of people just walked past him. I was thinking he could be dead. I mean, it was hundreds of people that just walked past him. And in our world, that's just kind of, and I was like, how many times do I walk past black, brown, poor men on the streets? Just walk past. I am struggling to regain my full humanity as I've led and gotten all of these amazing opportunities. I realize I've walked through spaces where I've walked past thousands of people. Even though I claim that I love and I serve. And as you guys were talking, I was just thinking about that moment yesterday. And I just sat there and called the BART operator I was shocked, but I was like, I do this every day. So sometimes Spirit gives us reminders to stop and be weak, and hoping that the people that we serve and that we work for just get a little bit of mercy. Like, isn't that what this is about? So I thank you two for these reflections, because I think they've changed me, even just in the course of this hour. Thank you.
So I want to thank our panelists. I'm going to end, because I can't resist, with a warrior story. I have found that many people of privilege achieve consciousness through sport. It's interesting. And there was a dynamic in the whole series. I'm sure most of the people in the room know it. The guy who built that team crafted them, a black man, was the commentator. The man who inherited the team was a white man, a privilege. I mean, it was right there the whole time. And I was actually fascinated. I was waiting for when they cut back from the final commercial, because you knew they were going to turn to Mark Jackson and say, right? I mean, I don't know if anybody else was watching, but and I couldn't wait to hear what he said, because I was just curious. And he killed it. He said with such grace and such dignity, this is their time. This is their victory. And it was right after the white man of privilege did the same on the stage. Because remember, these are pretty much all people of color playing a sport that almost all privileged people are purchasing tickets to watch. And I thought just the lesson of this series beyond, and I played basketball in high school and college. I love that team. It's so much fun to watch. But the story I will take away from the finals is that exchange watching Steve Kerr do what he did, and watch Mark Jackson do what he did in that exchange. And I saw in that a deep grace and consciousness, and it, made me real proud, and I hope they don't move to San Francisco. Thanks.